and welcome to the One More Thing podcast. Today, I am joined with Dr. Troy Doucet.
What's going on, man?
How you doing?
Oh, dude, life is good.
Yeah, so you had the honor of closing out this series, Suncoast at the Movies.
Yes.
It's been a great series, a lot of fun.
Yes.
It's been a nice, lighter one, and I got to say, the band is ready to not learn a new cover song every week.
Dude, you guys killed every song, though, man.
Thank you.
Every song
Thank
was fabulous.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Definitely stretched us as musicians and as a band, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
These things are always good. So this last week was Rocky.
Yes.
Out of all the movies out there, why'd you pick Rocky?
Rocky was it was either the first or second choice that was on my list, and that's part of the dilemma I faced is, our teaching staff were a bunch of guys, and so we had some very masculine driven movies, but I think it resonated well with everyone there. But Rocky's one of those ones, man, where it is overcoming adversity.
Yeah.
And so that was really the heart of the series was, we're going to look at some really cool blockbuster movies that everyone should be familiar with. But like, what's the heart? What are we trying to drive home for the community? And that one was an easy choice when we looked at how do we help people think about overcoming difficulty in life.
Right.
And I thought the clip worked well. I think, it was really supposed to be motivational and inspirational.
I was going to say that. I felt like I was watching like a motivational speech, and I didn't mind it. It was really good. Like, you said that it was more of a masculine movie, but the message itself relates to anybody.
Yeah.
That was it was masterfully brought to everyone, and I thought you did a really good job. I loved your visualization of having the cup. Filling it with the popcorn, the lessons and the values that we hold, and then all it takes is just one hit,
and we lose
some.
Yeah.
Where did you come up with that visual?
I don't know. I was thinking about ways in which, early on in life, when we are protected and provided for by our family, we're safe, man. We're secure. Mm-hmm. And that's when those values really they're very formative in who we become. And like I said in the sermon, without these, life later on can be very problematic for you. And it doesn't take a whole lot of psychology classes to realize, like, a lot of people who've done a lot of harm in society were missing some of those, like you call, those value elements.
Right.
But we also know that some of the values that we have built into us are social constructions. They are sort of culturally situated or, religiously positioned.
Right.
That don't hold the test of difficulty. Like my example was God was this particular kind of God and was supposed to do this if I had enough faith, if I showed my faith, and then boom, it hits. And it's not like God changed, I had to change. Right. And that was the point I was making, is that difficulty, strife, adversity should change us for the better. And that was one of the points I made, is we often change for the best when we're challenged by the worst.
Right.
And that's part of the drive of the whole, the whole Rocky series. Even Jesus's temptation was the fact that a lot of the stuff that happens in our life isn't our fault, right? Some things just happen. Yeah. Some things we make mistakes on and we learn from, but when adversity hits, it can rattle that cylinder, that container, what I call the comfort zone container. And at times, I believe it is God going, now that this has happened, maybe that shouldn't have been in the container at all. Maybe there was something in this container that's preventing you from growing into the human I want you to become, or that I know you can become. So
no, that's good. I felt a little attacked by your message, because you were talking about helicopter parents.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel a very big responsibility being a dad to two little girls.
Yeah, man.
Really just for my whole family, but really those two little girls, I just never want to see them hurt.
Yeah.
And that I know it's good for them to experience hardship, experience struggle. But there's also this other side to me is I don't want them to go through the same things I went through as a kid.
Yeah,
the struggle of different things. Not that I had a very traumatic childhood by any means. My parents were awesome, but we didn't have a lot of money. There was, I always joke with the girls because they each have like 15 to 20 pairs of shoes like in their closet, and they're like, I don't have any shoes to wear. I'm like, listen, kid, I have one pair of shoes for the whole year. That's it. That's all I got.
That's right.
So they live a different life, but more of my protection comes from like, if I feel like they're going to get hurt.
Yes.
You know, and you got 2 girls, you know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man.
So that struggle is definitely something I'm trying to navigate as they're getting older.
Yeah.
Because they're not little anymore.
Right.
You know, like Leighton's 8, London's 7, Leighton's about to be 9, and so we're just trying to navigate this new era of parenting these kids that are now a little older, a little bit more responsible, can step out into the unknown a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, even with school starting this week or last week, I'm sorry. You know, they're both apprehensive.
Oh yeah.
You know, they don't know who their teacher's going to be. You know, they don't know who the kids in the class are going to be. And you know, I love having little conversations with my youngest daughter, London, because she's more of my like, I'm scared. You know, she plays up that baby role. Really well.
Yeah.
And
pulls those heartstrings, man.
Yep. And so she knows what I'm going to say when she says I'm scared. And I tell her, you know, that's awesome. I'm glad you're scared because now you have an opportunity to be brave.
That's right.
And so she has that mantra memorized. As much as I want to just like walk into that class and tell all those kids, like, if you mess with my little girl, you're gonna have to deal with her daddy.
That's right.
You know, she has to be able to stand on her own 2 feet and deal with kids picking on her, things not going her way, stepping out. But like you said, if they don't do that, if we don't do that now, what kind of adult are they going to turn into?
That's right.
One of the things I remember from the parenting class, Susan, we went through it early on when the girls were young, but she said, you're not raising kids, you're raising adults.
Yeah. That's a good point, man.
You know, and so we actually joked with them the other day about that. Like, we're not raising kids, we're raising adults. And these are the values that we think are valuable for your life to be the best version of yourself that you can be.
Yeah, man.
But it's tough to navigate.
Yeah.
You know,
it's natural to want to protect, right? And I think you and Laura do a great job of setting up those boundaries.
No,
right?
that's more Laura.
And I think that's the key is, you know, I've dealt with parents as an educator, even where a kid failed a test that had plenty of time to prepare for, gave them all the resources that they needed to be successful, and they made a decision. And I've had parents come in and blame me. You know,
you made the test too hard.
Yeah, I made the test too hard or whatever, or they need to take a retake and pushed, you know, went to my superiors and things like that. And I go, that's helicopter parenting.
100%. Yeah.
That's 100%. That's not coming in with a humble mindset going with the kid going, you know, we realize he didn't prepare. Is there a way that we can, as opposed to just saying, my kid doesn't fail, and, you know. And so there's a big distinction between being what I would call like properly protective and then like overbearingly protective.
Yeah.
And I think that's how, if God is a model for us, that's exactly how God operates, right? Is that, look, I gave you a brain, I gave you reason, and you should be able to navigate this life. And when things go awry, you have a community of people. You know, it's just controversial, right? Like, I don't think God really does anything for us, but he does things through us. And so I can help you in the name of the God I feel that's inspiring me, motivating me to be a servant leader or whatever.
Right.
But God's not going to drop down in a cloud and save me, but he's going to use that spirit, that community, to help me walk through those things. And for me, that's a beautiful thing. I think that's absolutely way more beautiful of a theology than, you know, some sort of, you know,
interventionalist type.
Yeah, like that doesn't work. That doesn't work.
Well, it falls apart really quickly. Like you said, like when you have this paradigm of, I just have to pray and have enough faith, and, you know, my family member will be healed. And when they die, you're just like, I didn't have enough faith. You start to blame yourself. But when you can accept the fact that we live in a world that is free, you know, and so yes, you know, we have the love of God, but there's also chaos that happens.
That's right on.
And I don't think there's any, you know, like thing, like don't get me wrong. There have been plenty of miraculous things that have happened in my life that I'm just like, I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
So I don't want to disregard miracles by any means. But a lot of times, prayer doesn't heal that person.
That's right.
So trying to navigate that and reinforce your faith into a more durable
That's right.
faith, which is, I think, one of the objectives that you and the other guys on the teaching team are trying to instill in people.
Yeah,
is
man.
like, this faith will weather the storm.
That's
it will
right.
weather adversity,
That's
no
right
matter
on.
what you go through. One of the points I wanted to touch on, because you kind of like threw it out there.
Yeah.
You like dropped a little mini bomb and then you just like moved on from it. Was that you told the story of Jesus in the wilderness, and you said that the word Satan in that story
Oh, yeah.
is what is the Greek word that they use?
So it's from the root of diabolos,
Okay.
which I pointed out in the text, the word the devil.
Mm-hmm.
You have the article the, which it's erroneous, right? The text doesn't say the devil. It just simply says devil, which is, we get the idea of, it's a verb, right? It's a type of action that is taking place. But again, particular translations, because Satan comes from that same root, they give it a type of noun structure, but it's not. It's an action. It's something going on cognitively in the mind, which is the point I made. Like,
Right.
the battle may hit us externally. I might get sick or I
Right.
lose someone, but I fight the battle mentally, internally.
So you think there's a possibility within that story that it wasn't an actual personification of
No.
the devil, but it could have been these were the struggles that were going on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the word, like, it's, most translations say that Jesus was drawn to the desert by the Spirit of God to be tempted. Now, when I hear tempting, it's like an enticement to do wrong. But you look at what Satan, the devil, is testing Jesus with. There's nothing immoral about,
No, turning rocks into bread.
like, there's
Yeah.
nothing immoral about that. Jumping down and God fulfilling his word, there's nothing immoral. There's nothing immoral about choosing to bow down. And I mean, dude, yeah, give Jesus the whole planet. Like,
Right.
let's go. Why not? What's wrong with that? So if Jesus would have succumbed to those testings, I don't think by any means we can point the finger and say, see, he sinned or whatever.
Mhm.
But that's a whole different theological discussion. The idea of Satan is, again, it's so ambiguous as to what Satan represents. It's not the horn being with the tail and the pitchfork.
Yeah.
Satan, for me, is a force. It's a type of force. In the same way that I feel the Holy Spirit is a type of force. It's not a being. It's not an entity. It is a force that is absolutely apparent in human nature.
Mhm.
Because as much as we want to, Paul writes about it, don't live by the flesh, live by the Spirit. Carl Jung talks about the shadow man.
Mhm.
Every philosopher, every theologian has to realize, like, we have two very unique natures within us.
Yeah.
And they're in constant combat, right? I look out when I sit on the beach at siesta or whatever, and I look out over the water, and for me, it feels like heaven, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, there's a juxtaposition between sky and water that creates this sort of illumination of nature, of truth, whatever. And the same thing within me. There's a part of me that, man, wants to serve, wants to love, wants to do good. And there's a part of me that goes, screw that. I don't feel like doing that. I don't want to help. I don't want to do that.
Right.
And sometimes this side wins the battle, sometimes the other. But the idea, the personification of Satan, the word Satan, is really like, it is anything, any person, any place, anything that stands in contention to what God represents, the goodness of ourself,
Right.
the goodness in the world. Because, yeah, man, we could sit here and complain about how awful certain things are in the world when you read the news. But, bro, there's a lot of good happening. And it's one, like, Anthony Bourdain's one of my favorite all-time
Yeah.
authors and, of course, TV personalities. And I just watched a documentary on his life called Roadrunner. And it was really amazing. And they started out to go, what do you want me to talk about? The dude killed himself.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, well, that's what we're trying to figure out. He goes, look, dude, yeah, he had some darkness, but that dude had a lot of light around him. He had a lot of light. And that like hit me, man. And it's a realization, like there's a lot of good in the world that we often forget about, that we don't get to see on the news.
Yeah.
And for me, that is that juxtaposition. So Satan, it could be you standing in the way of doing what is good, right? And I use the example, like Jesus called Peter Satan.
Yeah.
And notice what he says, get behind me, Satan. Why does he say that? Because you're standing in my way of where I'm going. You're standing in front of the mission I'm on. And that's the idea. Sometimes I got to tell myself, get behind me, Satan.
Yeah.
And it's a pejorative term, but it's really reminding yourself, I have a bigger mission. I have a greater good to do.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I hate to, if people want to believe that there is a individual,
like a physical embodiment
of a fallen angel that causes God this much trouble because God's supposed to be all powerful, then go ahead and believe that. Sure. I mean, you have every right to believe that. But for me, Satan is really I like what Peter Enns talks about. It's really part of our free will, right? That's what gives God trouble, is like, I cannot impede upon freedom. And that's what, Satan really is the personification of.
Yeah. I love Jung's, basically story about, the shadow self.
Yeah.
Very much similar in line to, this personification of Satan, that yes, there is really good in us, but there's also really bad.
Yeah.
And once you identify that I have, and he takes it to an extreme. He takes it to, I have, as an individual, the ability to be a Nazi prison camp guard that was gassing and killing Jews.
Yes.
You have that in you.
Yeah.
And so once you recognize, because you will hear this all the time, oh, I can never do that. I would never do that. I would never be that.
Yeah.
But you do.
That's right.
You have that ability within you. So if you can identify that shadow self and know, like, I need to put these boundaries in place.
Yeah.
So that way I never, because it's not just, like you've joked about it before, like nobody just wakes up one day and is like, you know what, I'm going to be a serial killer.
Yeah.
Like there's steps that happen way before that. So if you can identify, like, I had that darkness in me.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put these protections in place.
Yes.
I'm going to choose the right path, the good path, as often as I can. Because you have the ability to go into deep, dark places and do really bad things.
That's right.
So it makes more sense to me, like, that is what they were talking about within those biblical texts.
Yeah, you look at, I mean, when you kind of focus on the situation of the first century, men had, and women for that fact as well, had beliefs in superstitious ideas, way more than we do now, because of the rise of, the scientific method, what we know about mental health and things like that. But that doesn't mean that the text itself can't illuminate some sort of truth and into, some sort of lens into our own self.
Sure.
And I think that's the struggle, right? That's the struggle. Because you look at the testing of Jesus, none of those things that he was tested by we could consider immoral, even by today's standards, where morality is really loose, So what is going on in the text? What is this entity that is testing Jesus? Well, one has to say, apparently God allows this sort of testing to happen. When you go back to Job, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
And so there is this intermingling of, again, I think it's ourself, right? It's this part of ourself that wants to do good, that has been grounded in a type of metaphysical reality that is moral, but it's also like that shadow side that we have to put behind us and say, I have this inclination to be a Nazi guard at Auschwitz, to have an affair on my spouse, to abuse my children, to cheat on my taxes. Like, dude, all of those things, regardless of how you label them, all represent the same sort of, part of us that has a vileness to it, know. So, and I think you're right. When you recognize that, and you're like, frick, because I find myself, man, going, when I was younger, raising kids, first time dad, yelling at my kids, you know, like just screaming. And then you realize, you know, Asher, you need to get yourself together, man. You need to, and you really go, I'm really saying that to myself, right? And when you realize you have that potential, if you don't recognize it, you will take the next step. You will take the next, and you'll bring it to, you know, maybe never serial killer level, but you may be a parent whose child comes to freaking, you know, like demonize you for that, man. And so,
well, it was a fantastic sermon. I thought it was so great, and it was a great way to end the series. Man. Very motivational, very inspirational, and I appreciate your gifts, man. You just did 4 weeks in a row, and that's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. So thank you for all your hard work. You've got a little break now. Pastor Larry will be up this weekend.
Hallelujah.
And you're going to be going and visiting your kids, which is great.
Can't wait.
So thank you so much for being on One More Thing. And thanks for the chat.
Yeah, bro. Thanks.